The story of Hanukkah is a story of freedom. Not necessarily the same kind of freedom that we read about during the holiday of Passover, in which we celebrate the fact that we are no longer slaves, that we are finally able to make our own decisions as individuals and as a people. No, the story of Hanukkah takes it one step further. Now that we have that freedom to be our own selves, what is it that we do with it? What are the choices that we make that really represent what freedom is all about? The story of Hanukkah, which tells about the great revolt of the Maccabees against the Greeks who ruled the land of Israel in the 2nd century before the Common Era, lays out two distinct choices. On one hand, you can choose to follow the rulers who tell you what the right thing is to do. That you can follow what other people are instructing you is the right path. As it says in the 1st chapter of the 1st book of Maccabees, the Greek king said to the Jews, Ach Torah echat, v'chuka echat, l'chol yoshvei artzenu. That there shall be only one Torah, only one teaching, only one set of rules that will guide our country. In other words, that you should follow me because I know what is best for you. That is one choice that the Maccabees, that the Jews could make with their newfound freedom. On the other hand, the second choice that they have is to follow their own hearts, to follow their own ideas as to the ways in which they should live, to follow their own teaching. As it says in the 3rd chapter of the 1st book of Maccabees, Ve'anachnu na'amod al nafshenu lihilachem be'ar chayenu v'toratenu. That we shall stand upon our lives, that we shall give our lives to fight for our lives and for our teaching. That it is the battle between Torah echat, one teaching, versus Toratenu, versus our teaching. And as we learn from the story of the Maccabees, they do fight for their own teaching. They do fight for their right to worship in their own way. A right which, according to one Jewish thinker, is the key role of any society. That what must be defended in a diversified society is the right to embrace, not subordinate, the various constituent cultures. That each of those cultures has a right to exist and will confuse and select themselves both with and against the other cultures within that society. And that the role of society is to help create the right environment for all of the different cultures with all of their different kinds of Torahs, all of their different teachings, to exist safely and peacefully. The holiday of Hanukkah reminds us of the fact that while living in a wonderfully diverse society as America, that is the most religiously, culturally, and ethnically diverse country in the history of mankind, that we are to remind ourselves that this society only exists so that we have the right and the ability to choose our own way of living. That the miracle of Hanukkah, of the lighting of the Hanukkah candles, that is passed down from generation to generation, is passed from house to house. That each household is required to light the candles to remind themselves of the miracle of Hanukkah, of the victory of a small ragtag band of Jews against a greater foe. That this miracle should remind us of the fact that we have fought for so long to be able to live in our own ways. But there is another step, one further step which is important to articulate. That while the requirement of lighting the Hanukkah candles is required for each household, that there is an extra step. There is another way to really bring the holiday deep inside our souls, which is that for each individual within a household to light their own Hanukkah candles. And as the Jewish thinker Judah Magnus once said, that it is by lighting those Hanukkah candles, not just for the household, but for yourselves as individuals, that the miracle of Hanukkah is thus turned inward into the soul of each individual. And when we realize that our souls are bound up with that desire to choose the ways in which we want to live, in which we want to experience the world, and then we go out and we make our own decisions of how we want to live, how we want to celebrate, how we want to mourn, how we want to cope, how we want to approach life, that is taking the miracle of Hanukkah in our own lives. That the lives in which we live, the Jewish lives, our secular lives, all the different kinds of lives that we will be living now and in the future will most likely be different than they were in the past. But that's the role of Hanukkah, to remind us that it is our duty, that it is our obligation to affirm our unique sense of our ability to choose how we want to live. And that by taking that miracle into our own lives, we can leave with the sense of the freedom of making choices that will give us more life and that will help share our light with all of those who we care about and who need that light in their lives.